Hello and welcome back, adventurers. This is Captain TTRPG, and today we're talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Welcome back, adventurers. Before we jump in today, I just want to put out a big thank you to everybody who's been watching these videos, especially those who've been subscribing. I know that it's a lot. YouTube's sending all sorts of things your way, and it's hard to determine if you want to watch a video or subscribe to somebody new. And just knowing that my videos are maybe helping some people out there, or at least are interesting enough to pass some time, that means a lot to me. So I just want to thank everybody. It means so much, especially somebody new into this territory that is so full of great content already. Anyway, enough of that. Let's dive into the topic today. We are kicking off a new ranking series. We did the weapons. Now we're going to talk about class archetypes. So while I still have many classes to make subclass ranking videos for, I wanted to talk about this because there's just so many archetype related things to talk about, and the class archetypes are just kind of a good place to start. So for most of the PF2e community out there, at least as far as I can gather, you're playing with games that have the free archetype system in play, which means starting at level 2, you're going to choose an archetype. Now, this isn't true for everybody, and anybody can take archetypes, even using their class feats, but a lot of people use the free archetype system. So while my class guides are helpful for level 1, at least I hope they are, once you get to level 2 and you might have a free archetype to think about, now you've got a lot of options and I haven't helped you at all. I want to start doing that with this series. Assuming this all goes well, I might go as far as to start ranking the other archetypes, but boy, are there so many of those, so we'll see. What are multi-class archetypes? These are the archetypes that give you access to the features and feats of another class. For those used to D&D, this is kind of the closest we get to what D&D's version of multi-classing is, but it's very, very different. Because unlike that, you're not going to get some of the most important features, at least not without taking some feats or taking some archetype feats later on that do give you access to some of that. Not all archetypes represent other classes in the game. So keep that in mind, that while we're talking about class archetypes, there are way more archetypes that aren't class archetypes than are. So what are you getting most of the time from class archetypes? Well, you're really just kind of getting a taste of the class and some of its important features, though not all of them. However, the extent to which you get their features and which ones you get and how valuable they are, well, that actually varies quite a bit from archetype to archetype, which is why I think this is helpful, because you might think that if you take the Barbarian class archetype, you're going to get all of the best stuff from Barbarian, but maybe that's not exactly true. Or you might think if you take the Exemplar class archetype, you're going to get nothing of value. That may not be true. So I want to talk about what's really there for you, what you can expect to gain by taking the archetype, and the value that might have to your build. In this video, I'm just going to focus on the first 8 alphabetically, because I want to try to pull this off in 3 videos, and we ought to be fine with that, I hope. Now, we do have a couple more classes coming soon that might factor in. They'll probably get their own follow-up video, but they could fall into the third one, but it won't be alphabetical. Keep in mind, we have those coming in July. With that lovely intro, this will have far different criteria than my subclass ranking videos. But before we can talk about that, let's talk about what types of things will be in a class archetype. First thing you get is a dedication. This has to be taken as the first feat. This is how you get into a class archetype. They are all level 2 available for the class archetypes, now not true for general archetypes. And this will give you a wide variety of things. Sometimes there's skill proficiencies, sometimes you get class features. It varies quite a bit, but some of them are very strong and some of them are less powerful, what you get up front. Then there are the class feats. At level 4, you will always have the option to take a archetype feat that will give you a class feat of level 1 or 2. This is the prereq for taking a different archetype feat that lets you access higher level class feats. And it'll always be your current level divided by 2, rounded down of the class level. So if you're level 6, you can still only take up to level 1 and level 2 class feats. But if you're level 8, you can take up to level 4 class feats from the other class. So that'll be very standard. That's across all of these. So it's not really a factor here. Just know that that's how it works. And I'll put it up on screen here while I talk about it, so it hopefully makes a little bit more sense on how that works exactly. So that means that those lower level feats for the class that you're archetyping into are very impactful, though, in the ranking. Because if you've got amazing feats at levels 1, 2, 4, even 6, those are going to play a lot more into somebody's adventure than anything up to level 10. And remember, level 10 is the highest level feat you'll be able to get, because you have to be level 20 in your class to get a level 10 feat in the class you're archetyping into. So just keep that in mind. That plays a big part in the rankings. Then we have class feature archetype feats. These are feats in the archetype that allow you to access certain class features. Some of them are extremely potent, some of them less so, but they do give you a little more taste of what's in the class. So, like for instance, this could give you access to a rogue sneak attack, granted a much weaker one, or to the flurry of blows from a monk, admittedly altered. So this does some of accessing their features without making them irrelevant, because they generally have a much better version, and it's usually right away at level 1. For spellcasting classes, there are 2 types we'll talk about here. You're going to get access to their spellcasting. So the first one is for full casters, and the second one is for bounded casters, like the Magus. For full casters, there is something called basic spellcasting at level 4, and this is across the board for full casters. It'll grant you a first level spell slot and 1 second level spell slot once you hit level 6, and a 3rd level slot at 8th level, all for just taking basic spellcasting, which is cool, plus you get some cantrips, by the way. At level 12, if you took basic casting, you can take expert spellcasting, which will increase your casting proficiencies to expert and give you 4th level slots. Now, you do generally have to have a certain level of proficiency in one particular skill to be able to take this as well, so be careful with each class. You then get a 5th level slot at 14 and a 6th level slot at 16th level. Finally, you get to take master spellcasting, which is a feat you can take at 18th level, and it'll improve also at 20th level, so you're going to get some higher level slots from that, up to as high as 8th level spell slots, and you'll have master proficiency with your spell casting ability. For those bounded casters, you'll instead get just 2 levels of spell casting at a time, and they will increase with you as you level up. So just like bounded casters, you only get 2 different levels at any time. Same thing here. So little different versions of spellcasting, but if you take a spellcasting class as your class archetype, you are going to get some spells. Okay, so we know what we can possibly get from our class archetypes, and we'll get into the details as we talk about each one, but how am I actually going to rank them on the S to D scale? An S archetype is something that's easily applicable to all classes and builds, providing anyone benefits. You gain the majority of the power, or most key abilities from the class that it mimics. These could be so good that maybe it's a little too much of the class's power occasionally. This should be very rare if it comes up at all. The class feats and or the archetype feats should also be generally useful to take, and don't railroad your build. It should be easy to access as well, because all of these archetypes have a way to access them, certain ability scores you have to have. It should be very easy to get. An A-class archetype is capable of being slotted into many classes, though it won't work for all of them. Offers up a decent amount of power for the class, but not giving it all away. For a caster class, it goes beyond just the basic spellcasting benefits to really amp up the choice. There are multiple solid feats at early levels and or solid archetype feats to where you can, kind of ignore those class feats if you don't like them. Again, it should be fairly easy to access though. A B will fit under a fair amount of classes and builds, but usually not even half the classes are a great fit. Offers some solid benefits for specific builds, or just simple versatility without pushing that versatility into a higher level of cohesion. A full caster that doesn't offer much more than just its spellcasting would really land here at a B. C, there is a downside to taking the archetype that is tough to overcome, but the advantages of the archetype feats and or class feats at early levels can really make up for that. There may be no downside, but the upsides are challenging for many classes or builds to really take advantage of, so there's another reason it could fall here. And finally, D. Why did you take this? These are archetypes that offer very little to almost any class. Their archetype feats are unappealing or difficult to gain, or any value from the dedication itself is near worthless. I highly recommend rethinking these class archetypes specifically. It's probably also not easy to access them, though it still may be just not a whole lot of value. Okay, with that out of the way, let's jump into the first archetype we're talking about today, the Alchemist, because again, we're doing this in alphabetical order. For the Alchemist, you have to have intelligence modifier of +2. The dedication, not only do you get bomb training, which is redundant if you're a martial with martial weapons, because bombs are a martial weapon, but otherwise, great. And you get crafting out the gate, which is generally just good. You also get the alchemical crafting feat for free, which you feel like is necessary, but cool. You also get quick alchemy, which is a major class feature here. So this gives us versatile vials, 4 in fact, as well as 4 formulas for alchemical items on top of the 4 we get from alchemical crafting. You're getting all sorts of stuff from this dedication alone. This is so much power. And it doesn't leave a ton of stuff out, except for you're not getting a subclass, which means you can't take subclass related feats, but there's like basically none of those in the Alchemist. You also don't get the subclass bonuses, but straight up, you get a lot of the features for the class in your dedication alone at level 2. Then we've got some other feature related feats going on here. At level 4, you can gain advanced alchemy, which is another huge class feature, which gives you free alchemical items every single day at the start of the day. And then there's a feat at level 6 that can increase the number of free items a day as you level up, and that's also valuable. You take that one feat, and then as you level up, you get a few more. It's not a huge number, but it's still really good. You do get to increase your Alchemist class DC to Expert at 12, which can matter because you've got certain aspects to the class that do utilize your class DC. As far as early game feats, there's some really solid level 1 and level 2 feats for this class, especially if you want to lean into bombs. Things like Far Lobber, letting you throw bombs further, which is great. Quick Bomber, which lets you grab a bomb out and throw it for 1 action, which is necessary if you're going to be a bomber. You get Efficient Alchemy, which increases items from your advanced alchemy, which is another way to boost them. You get Invigorating Elixir, which increases the value of healing elixirs, which is huge because it might be the whole reason you took this, and even Directional Bombs and Greater Invigorating Elixir later on, which lets you do more with your bombs and get greater value out of your elixirs. Really, really solid early level feats to boost you if you went this direction. Any intelligence-based caster or near martial, like investigators or inventors, could get a lot of value out of this archetype. Even full martials, like rangers or fighters or exemplars who want to lean into bombing especially, but just want to have access to alchemical items, could easily take this with just a +2 in intelligence. Not hard to pull off, and you can still be your full martial self. Plus you can use other things that intelligence gives you value for, like recall knowledge. But it's really easy to get this and throw it onto a solid martial body as well. This is an A subclass. It really ticks those boxes that I talked about for the A. You're getting great features here. You're still not getting everything out the gate, but you get more and more of it as you go. And it's got solid feats. Boy, this could really fit with so many classes. It's not going to fit with classes that, maybe don't want intelligence for one reason or another, but by and large, this is just going to fit. Go bombs, go. Next up, we have the Animist. This requires a Wisdom +2. Your dedication is a pretty standard full caster dedication. You get 2 cantrips, and they must be divine. You get trained in your casting attack and DC, all the stuff that casters normally get, but you get an apparition, which is normally basically the subclass you're choosing as a Animist at level 1. Now, normally you get 2 as an Animist. You're just getting 1, but that's still really good. So what do you get from an apparition? Well, not only do you get some skill proficiencies when they're active with you, which you have 1, so it'll be your active apparition. You also get some options for spell casting in there too. Now, granted, you can't cast if you don't have slots, but this gives you more variety in the spells you have access to. So you get trained in the apparition skills, you get access to the spells they get access to. If you're level 8 as a character, you are expert in those skills, just straight up. And if you're level 16 as your own character, you're master in that skill. That's amazing. It's so good. You can also change to a different apparition with 1 day of downtime. That's all it takes if you want to switch apparition. And then again, you've got access to their spells as well, so you can use those with your spell slots instead of the ones you take from just taking the spellcasting feats. All of this is just a lot of flexibility for the dedication. Spellcasting, okay, we talked about it earlier. Straightforward, you get your basic casting, you've got the advanced ones later. All that's still available like any other full caster. What do we have beyond that? Well, we've got access to a couple interesting feats early on, like Spirit Familiar. Having a familiar is valuable, and getting access to one right away, very solid. You can get enhanced familiar feats as well, so you can really buff up your familiar. You get a lot of spell shapes, which you might actually want to use if you want to lean into the casting at all. And interestingly, because the Animist has some leaning toward like gishy playstyles here and there, there's actually martial feats early on in the Animist set of class feats. So if you're a martial picking this up, this actually fits really well. This does stand above other full caster class archetypes. They added versatility from the apparition, which is huge. The skill boosts are really great. You really don't see that otherwise. This is an instance, like the Alchemist, of a fantastic dedication that gives you access to some of what makes the class good, but doesn't go full blown on it. The feats tend to lend themselves to many different classes and playstyles, so if you want to be a caster with another class, caster archetype, or a martial picking this up, either way you can. This really can be a great choice if you want to go a Gish. Honestly, this might be one of my favorite Gish choices, which is why this gets an A. So not only can you go full caster, this is really great for picking up spell casting abilities on your martial and leaning into what makes both sides good. The requirement of wisdom having a +2 isn't bad. Any martial character would like to have not only better will saves, but it's nice to have a higher perception for going earlier in combat. So win-win, go Animist. Boy, we kicked off strong. All right, let's keep going. Let's see if the Barbarian can keep it up. So what are your requirements? You need +2 in strength and a +2 in con. Already, that's not great. Having to have +2 in 2 different stats makes this far less flexible. What's your dedication? So the big thing you get here is you do get rage. However, this is a one action feature that you use, so you aren't going to get the free version of it that you normally would if you are a Barbarian, where on initiatives you just get to go to rage. You actually have to spend an action, and that will boost your damage with melee weapons and give you temp HP. But there are a few problems with the archetype version of it. First, the archetype is going to give you a -1 to your AC while raging. That used to be something for the class itself. They got rid of it in the class but kept it in the archetype. That hurts a lot. Second, which is always true for rage, you can't use any actions with the concentrate trait on it. So you're not going to pick this up with spellcasters. At least not generally speaking. Now there is a feat you can take early on for barbarians that could still allow you to cast while raging, but you're just making your life harder. For fighters and champions and characters like that using non-finesse weapons, this may not be a huge loss. You know, the AC may not hurt too much, and the requirements probably aren't terrible, but that's getting it pretty niche. The only thing that you get trained in is athletics. Now, the other big problem, when you get the dedication, you choose an instinct, which is good, right? You choose a barbarian instinct, but you don't get any benefits from that at all. Instead, you just gain its anathema. So all you're doing is restricting yourself further. So this is downside on top of downside, really, with a small upside of the bonus damage from rage in the dedication. That's really a bad start. But it's not all bad. So features. At level 4, there's an archetype feat called Resiliency, and this will help boost your HP. In fact, because it's Barbarian, it's going to boost your HP by 3 for every Barbarian class archetype feat you get, which is great. And anybody can take this as long as their base class doesn't give them more than 10 hit points plus their Constitution modifier every time you level up, which is every class so far, except the Barbarian. So no matter who you take this with, you can take Resiliency and get some nice HP boosting, which might in some small way make up for that loss of AC. Not bad. As we go a little bit further, at level 6, you can actually get access to the Instinct ability that normally comes online at level 1 for an Instinct for the one you chose. So now you're actually getting value out of your Instinct, and you really do need this to feel good about having it. Some of these are amazing. For instance, Elemental, when you're in a rage, your damage bonus is now a +4, type of the element that you chose, by the way, and it makes you concealed to ranged attackers. So great, this makes you really solid, and it makes it so that you can also use your kineticist impulses. Also really, really cool. So this could be a great combo, especially if you're a kineticist. But, you know, others are good too. Dragon, Giant, they're all going to boost your damage. They're going to give you some bonuses that you would have normally gotten at level 1 as a Barbarian. Good stuff here. So this is probably the most valuable archetype feat you can take as a Barbarian. The only other archetype feat that isn't about taking class feats from the Barbarian is at level 12. If your proficiency in Fortitude saves is Expert, you can move it to Master. Now, there are 13 classes that will never normally get above Master in Fortitude saves, but 9 of those are casters, and you're probably not taking this as a caster, so there's a good chance you don't even care about this because you might get to Master in Fortitude saves anyway, or you might already have it. What are some good Barbarian feats early on? Well, we've got Sudden Charge, which is nice for getting across, especially first round, just getting 2 strides in and then still getting to attack, taken by a lot of Barbarians. And then there's nice Fast Movement, which increases your base movement speed. So some really good, valuable, low-level stuff that almost anybody can get value out of, at least martials. These aren't mind-blowing compared to what other martials get access to anyway. At level 6, most instincts get a good feat, like a Dragon getting a breath weapon, or Elementals getting an explosion. So think about those. Now keep in mind that those are class feat level 6, so you have to be level 12 in order to take them, but but it can still be really good. So do keep this in mind. It might not be a bad way to go if you're going to go a little higher level. Still, overall, that dedication is terrible, and I'm going to give this a C. It's hard to take it with the requirements. Pretty rough dedication. There's some pretty big downsides here. I can easily see it on a fighter or a champion or kineticist if you're taking the elemental instinct. That's the only one I'm going to say would hit higher than that for me. In fact, this might even be a B or possibly even an A for that specific combo because it's really, really good. But generally speaking, I think this falls behind for almost every other class. I love the Barbarian as a class, but its archetype just misses the mark. Bard, Charisma +2. Okay, not too bad. The dedication. We have our standard caster stuff here. So full caster stuff, that's all good. But we also get to choose a subclass. We get no benefits from it, but we'll be able to grab class feats that require it. And there's a ton of class feats in the Bard that require you to have a subclass. So this is actually really important. We do get to grab 2 trained skills here, occultism and performance. So that's nice, even if they're maybe not the most used skills. One thing that we don't get, and it's really worth mention here, is we are lacking any sort of composition cantrip at all. And the class is built around them. Particularly, we don't have Courageous Anthem. While getting that may have stepped on the class too much, and I get that, there are so many feats that you can't even take here without it, or are negatively impacted by not having a composition cantrip, that it really hurts the archetype. At level 4, it's just standard caster stuff, so don't get too excited at level 4, although basic spellcasting is amazing, so always be somewhat excited about that. Level 6 does give you the chance to grab Counter Performance, which is a focus spell, and it's a solid reaction spell, so that's good. You still don't have, at least unless you've taken a level 1 or 2 feat, you still don't have a composition cantrip, mind you. At level 8, there's a standard spellcaster thing here where we can get expanded spell slots for some of the spell slots we do have. The way this works is the highest 2 levels, so if I have 1st, 2nd, and 3rd level spell slots, I don't get an extra spell slot for numbers 3 and 2, but I get an extra level 1 spell slot, and then if I get a 4th level spell slot, I will only have 1 4th and 1 3rd, but I'll have 2 2nd and 2 1st. So this is really, really valuable. But the other thing we get the option of taking at level 8 is access to Courageous Anthem, which is why people play the Bard in the first place. So finally at level 8, we can get something that really makes this all come together. It can be a long time to wait, but if you're starting later campaign, then maybe it's not a problem at all. Beyond level 8 though, standard spellcasting stuff. That's it, we talked about it, expert and master spellcasting. Great, all good to have, but nothing going beyond that. As far as early feats that you can take, there's some that are subclass related, and they can be good. So depending on the muse you chose, this can be very different how it feels. Some of them still have good options, but a lot of these really relate to your composition cantrips, and you don't have any of those. And then there's Warrior Muse, which is basically unplayable early on because it requires you to have Courageous Anthem to take any of their early feats, which you don't have. So that lack of Courageous Anthem is an absolute killer for this class archetype. Now, having said that, as you do level up, it does get very strong. If you're going to play to like levels 12 to 20 or something like this, it's amazing. Good focus spells. You can afford the 1-action attacks, on many builds, not everything. And then, even as a marshal, this can be a great way to play because you could still possibly afford that tax or take some feats to help with that. But the downsides really hurt it a lot. So while basically if you had Courageous Anthem at level 1, this would be A hands down. But I'm going to have to drop it to a B because of the lack of having those upfront focus spells that you really do need to pull this all together. Last thing I'll say is Charisma is great. You want it on so many characters because Intimidation's so strong, Diplomacy is so strong. So probably not a big deal having that Charisma on there, but still a B thanks to the way that it's stacked with not getting access to Courageous Anthem early on. And we are up to the Champion. The requirements here are Charisma +2 and Strength +2. Yes, we're falling into the Barbarian thing again. For your dedication, you're going to choose a deity and a cause. But all you really get from it are the ability to sanctify, if you want to, which is to say I am solidly good or solidly evil, which has effects to it. And that depends on the deity you chose. And then you gain the downsides of the edicts and anathema. Fantastic. On the plus side, you do get both religion and the skill associated with your deity to be proficient in. Nice. The big feature we care about is the armor training. You get light and medium armor training out of the gate. So if you're a caster and you take this, somehow, great, you're going to get light and medium armor. That's fantastic. However, if you already had light and medium armor training, you get heavy armor instead. Now that's a big deal, because heavy armor is substantially stronger than light and medium armor is. So suddenly, you're very happy about taking this. You might take it just for that, in fact. So that training, depending on what you've got going on, can be the whole reason you want this. Just think about, like, let's take a gunslinger. Let's say you go with a gunslinger that likes to get up in melee because you chose one of the ones that's really good up front, right? You use combination weapons. Having heavy armor is a massive boost to that class, actually. So this could be a whole reason you do this for a class that doesn't normally get beyond medium armor. As you keep going, level 4 has some interesting options, because not only do you have the usual first and second level class stuff, like you always do, there are 2 other archetype feats at level 2. The first is extra hit points, like we saw with Barbarian. Now, you have to have a class that only has 8 plus con at most, so it does cut out things like fighters and rangers, but otherwise you get the +3 for every archetype feat you take. Solid stuff. But the other thing you get to choose is you get to choose one of the devotion spells. These are Lay on Hands, Touch of the Void, and Shields of the Spirit. These are really good focus spells and worth taking. Honestly, at level 4, you might have a lot of hard choices. At level 6, once again, you get some great features for the class out of your archetype feats. You get the subclass's champion reaction. This is usually the whole reason you take the cause you do, because you want the champion's reaction. Well, at least at level 6, we finally get it. You'll probably use it all the time, let's be honest. This is better than level 8 with Courageous Anthem is, but it's still equally important to your build. So keep in mind that you were hurting before this by not having it. The other non-standard option at 6 is getting Blessing of the Devoted, which is a very strong class feature as well. And you've noticed, but I keep putting these up on the screen, so do read it if you want to. As far as beyond level 6, there's really nothing in the archetype beyond 6, so you just don't have any special feats other than taking class feats, which again are good, and there are good feat options in there. Nothing worth like mentioning or calling out right now as particularly over the top, but really good choices. So you won't feel bad about taking those. There's just nothing special as archetype class feats go. But since you've got good ones at 4 and 6, and there's multiple of them, you're probably going to be taking those all the way up to level 12 anyway. Champions have amazing options early on. Yes, you have to take a few drawbacks with the dedication, and that does hurt, but the armor is so good, maybe you just don't care. Honestly, if it wasn't for the dual ability requirement, meaning you have to have both charisma and strength, this would be an A for me. That really holds it back, though. So it's getting a B, mostly because it's so restrictive, because it could be really good on a whole lot of different builds, but I can't think of a lot of charisma-based spellcasters who want to have 2 in their strength, for instance, to get light and medium armor. You might just take the general feat to get armor instead. But there are just really good values to this. So yes, it's going to fit for certain classes, and it's going to feel amazing on those classes. Again, charisma you're never upset to have, but it holds it back as a B when I wanted to give it an A. Cleric! Wisdom +2, no surprise, like the Animist. Dedication, standard spellcasting stuff. Cantrips, you're getting to choose a deity. Cool, and you have the ability to sanctify. Great, also have the anathema. Boo. And you get the deity skill, plus you get religion. So, very similar to champion in many ways. But no armor training, but you do get a spellcasting, so trade-off there. As far as spellcasting goes, at level 4, just standard stuff, right? Standard basic spellcasting, you'll get the same things at 8, 12, and 18 that other spellcasting gets. So, cool, but kind of boring when we're talking about this list. Again, not boring for your character, good, but nothing exciting and mind-blowing for this. And we don't get any of the actual crazy features from the Cleric. None. The big loss is the fact that you don't get a font, ever, and you can never take anything to get a font. So there's no free uses of heal every day. Even if they give you a limited font, I think it would have been a big deal. You know, font for a normal Cleric is 4 free uses of heal or harm every day, starting at level 1, and it increases to 5 eventually. I think they could have given, a level 8 feature to take that would have given you like 2, maybe, and it would have felt much better. But really, this is kind of our standard B. This is the B'est of Bs, if you will. Now, it did almost teeter on C because of the anathema, but I don't think it hurts it really that badly. Here, you can avoid bad anathemas. So I really think, like, if you're going to look at a B, well, okay, maybe this isn't the most standard B, but it's a pretty standard B. The one other thing that holds it back a little bit from being what I'd call the purely standard B is the class feats early on really aren't amazing. So keep that in mind. It's not that there aren't good ones. It's just nothing that I want to point out that's going to blow your mind. And we're up to the Druid, also Wisdom +2. Great, we got through our Wisdom casters quickly. Again, pretty easy to get. The Druid starts by looking a lot like a Cleric. You get the standard casting stuff, your cantrips, all of that. You choose a basic Druid subclass, and you only get the drawbacks, like we did with Cleric and Champion. But you get to grab related feats, which does matter for this a lot. You get both nature and whatever skill you get from your order or subclass here. So again, standard. Features. However, this is where it gets a little interesting. So at level 4, you get the option to take your order's focus spell. Now be careful, this isn't great for the animal order in particular, as you don't actually gain your pet from doing this. So if you take the animal order at level 1 as a druid, you're going to get your animal companion. You don't get that here by taking this. So generally speaking, I would say don't take animal as your order. Any other order, you're going to feel good. This is going to feel really good. From 6 and up, it's all just standard casting stuff. Keeping in mind, of course, at 4, you had the option to do standard casting stuff too. But there's no other like big feature class feats you get from the archetype past level 4, but at least you do get that focus spell. So that's something. Depending on which order you choose, the feat options are really going to be either valuable or almost completely inconsequential. So like I said, though, probably don't take animal order. Anything else is probably fine. If you want an animal companion, just take Beastmaster. That's how you do it really well. Just take Beastmaster. On the other hand, the other order feats can be really good, especially some of the stuff that got revamped with the remaster. I would say the Storm feels really good. I would say the Plant feels really good. So there's others that feel just amazing. You're going to get great feat options. You can go to my Druid subclass ranking video to get a really good feel for what might be available to you if you take some of these other orders. This is still a B. This doesn't pass into A. It may even be a more standard B than Cleric. It's definitely above Cleric in my mind in the B rankings, but it is definitely a B, and it would take more than that, though, more than just one extra thing at 4 to get it to boost up to A. The Animist had that. The Druid doesn't quite get there. Moving on to our last one for today, we're wrapping up with the Exemplar. This has a prerequisite of Strength +2 or Dex +2. Remember, we had those ands before with Barbarian and Champion. This is an or, making it super flexible. Like, this is how you make flexibility work out. The dedication. You gain an icon. Boom. Icons are extremely potent. Even just their passive abilities, the imminence, that's just amazing. You don't even need to do anything else with them. And that can be so valuable. You want to give your team within 15 feet a +1 to attack rolls at all times? Done. There's an icon for that. You want your weapon to have a constant +2 damage bonus with no drawbacks? Done. You want to have +10 speed boost? Done. And those are just a few examples of the passive abilities. Because guess what? Pretty soon, meaning next week, we're going to be talking about the Exemplar, and you'll get deep onto what all of these can do. These are so powerful. Now, you can still use the active ability, the Transcendence. The way it works is you use Transcendence. Normally, you'd have to move your spike. Normally, you'd move your spark to a different icon. In this case, the spark just goes inside you, and it takes an action later to put it back into your icon, like on the next turn. But you can still use the extremely potent Transcendence ability, so don't worry about that. Now, this is all you really get with your dedication. You don't even get a single skill training, but it doesn't matter. This is so powerful. What kind of features do we get? Well, as far as feature feats go, at level 4, you can take an HP boost. We've already seen that a couple of times. Same idea. At level 10, you can boost your Exemplar DC to Expert, which is critical for certain icons because they actually do use your DC. At 12, you can get a second icon. Now, when you use your Transcendence, you're going to be bouncing between icons, doing Transcendences back and forth, which is huge. A second icon is so good. Oftentimes, as an Exemplar, you're bouncing between 2 of your icons already most of the time, so you're almost up to that place. As far as feats go, there are some low-level ones that can be kind of hard to take, so I will put that out there, that it can be a little bit of a struggle to take those early ones. They may not fit for every build. There are some, you would still take them regardless, that can work with any build, but it is a little bit restrictive. So that's something to call out. However, as you go up, there are some amazing feats that get really powerful. And if you get to level 16 in your class, letting you take level 8 feats from Exemplar, you can get another icon. Yes, you can get up to a third. Again, crazy stuff, really, really powerful. This is an S. Honestly, this could go on any any build, because having that Dex +2 as an option, which even casters want to take just for their AC, great. You throw it on there. You take a really solid icon. I mean, hell, a bard. Who needs a bard? You can just be your own bard. That's not true. Bards actually, Courageous Anthem is stronger than this, but that +1 bonus to attack rolls, you feel bard-like even if you're a different kind of caster. And for marshals, this is just obvious strength, right? Straight damage boost, which we don't normally get, because if we got it from Barbarian, sure, you get a +2 bonus to damage from them too, only have to take a -1 to your AC and anathemas and all this stuff. You can just take a weapon icon and just have it. And then you can have the extremely powerful Transcendence abilities they get too. This is strong across the board, maybe even a little too strong. And that's where we're going to leave off for today. What do you think? Was I too harsh on the Barbarian? Maybe you don't like the Exemplar icons and think I'm way off giving it an S. Tell me in the comments below, and as always, adventure on.